Good afternoon and welcome to the People's Verdict. I'm Patrick Soko, and today's topic of discussion is awareness in the management of the Constituency Development Fund, CDF. The Constituency Development Fund was first introduced in the year 1995. It is an establishment of the law in the Constitution of Zambia, Article 162, and guided by the 2022 CDF guidelines under the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. In 2021, the government increased the amount of CDF from 1.6 million kwacha to 25.7 million kwacha per constituency and expanded its scope from funding only community projects to youth, women, community empowerment, and secondary boarding school and skills development bursaries. Well, today's show is part of the Ask project by the Alliance for Community Action, ACA, and the project has an overall goal of promoting the voices of citizens in the management of Constituency Development Fund, CDF. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this second week of the Ask TV series. Today's topic, as I earlier alluded, is public awareness on the management of CDF. My guest on the program today is the Advocacy Officer, Information and Advocacy Officer, and for Alliance for Community Action, Mr. Andrew Banda. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much, Patrick, and thank you very much to the viewers.
Interesting. This is actually the second year you and I are having a conversation.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, but today you have to be representing Alliance for Community Action to help me discuss this important issue pertaining to the Constituency Development Fund, CDF, which has been topical in our country. And just to get us started, Mr. Banda, one of the strategies of the CDF is to increase citizens' involvement in the provision of developmental services and in so doing empower them to manage their livelihoods. However, this cannot be actualized if resources are not managed prudently. How do you suggest that citizens make sure that those in charge of managing CDF are held accountable?
Okay. First and foremost, Patrick, one of the most critical things which I think people have to grasp with from the beginning is that CDF is their money. I think if you are coming from that background of where you know this is your money, it's very, you feel much more confident to speak up. So citizens have to be aware, especially young people, because young people did bring about you can say directly this 25.7 million increment in CDF because of the youth vote which took place in the last election. So it's very imperative for the young people and all citizens to realize that this money is their money. And when they realize that this money is their money, that's when they'll have the confidence. And second of all, why they should get involved is that they want, I'm pretty sure all young people voted for a reason, and because of why they voted for employment, they voted for development, they voted for inclusion and all these things. It all starts in ensuring that we hold our leaders accountable and making sure that all the money which has been sent to be used on the development of our community is used for that way, because if that money is taken elsewhere and diverted, it means the things which we voted for will not be actualized come 2026. So it's very imperative for all citizens, especially young people, to ensure that they take part, they ask questions from their zone leaders, from their ward development leaders, from their MPs, and all the leaders and in the CDF management structure to ensure that the CDF funds and the projects which will be happening are managed prudently.
My second question would be that why are you interested in strengthening the capacity of citizens to demand for accountability?
For that, it also stems, first of all, from the belief which we as an organization have. We believe that, first of all, Zambians' money belongs to all Zambians, and it shouldn't benefit the few, who most of the time have just been centralized in Lusaka. So when we are talking about ensuring that citizens understand and have the capacity, we want citizens to have a share in the national cake because it's their money. We want citizens to understand that. And we also want the citizens to to have their rights realized. Because from the Alliance for Community Action, we use a methodology called the rights-based approach, meaning basically that citizens have rights, and it's the government's responsibility to ensure that these rights are turned into things which citizens can see and touch. Citizens have the right to education, but if there is no school, doesn't mean that that right is actualized. So when resources such as this come about, and when citizens know how to interact with these resources and they are capacitated to interact with this resource better, it means that they will ensure that their right to education is not just on paper. Their right to education is translated into an actual physical school with a teacher in the classroom. Their right to education is translated to a clinic which is nearby. Their right to to health, and their right to water is translated to a borehole where they can draw clean and safe water. So we are very much interested in capacitating citizens so that they have their rights realized, because rights are not meant to just sit on paper, and those rights are supposed to be actualized. So as the Alliance for Community Action, we want citizens to realize this and citizens to ensure that their rights are actualized.
Interesting. Our dear viewers, in case you are just joining us, you have not missed much. We are just discussing issues pertaining to the Constituency Development Fund, CDF, and this is a topical issue in the country. As you already know, that CDF is playing a critical role towards vital development in respective constituencies. In case you want to join the conversation, the number is on your screen. You can do so by getting in touch with us. Then we respond to your concern, and then you can equally do so on our Facebook page by leaving us a message, then we'll be able to read it to others. So your views matter on this program. It is no wonder the Alliance for Community Action has thought of this initiative to ask questions pertaining to CDF, how it is managed, and how it is safeguarding the interest of our citizens. And this is our second discussion of this program. In case you missed the other one, today we are still discussing various issues pertaining to CDF. Now, continuing with our discussion, Mr. Banda, what has been your observation on the CDF processes management and implementation in the district you are working in? And how would you just assess that? Probably, I know you are an organization that works with communities and mostly in rural areas. How has been your assessment of on CDF?
When it comes to the assessment and performance on CDF, thus far, though CDF is a very great thing, we must say, and we from the Alliance for Community Action would like to see it succeed. What we've seen is that there's little information about CDF in the rural areas. Most of the time when people think of the rural areas, for example, they'll think of rural areas where they'll say Rufunsa town is a rural area. But in Rufunsa town, there's also a rural area of Rufunsa town. So these are the areas which are most disconnected from information, where the people need development the most, and they are not accessing that development. So I think when it comes to our assessment for CDF, we found that there's a lot of lack of information. Information hasn't really been spread to the people for the people to understand what CDF is. The citizens also didn't have enough time to grasp the new components which were introduced. In some of the districts which we were in, for example, when we do a random check among the young people, if they know that there is bursaries and skills bursaries in CDF, they don't know. And because they didn't know, they didn't apply. And these are young people who are just in the community, in the rural areas, and they are waiting for opportunities. So it's stories like this which are very heartbreaking, where you can see that the information divide is just reaching the urban areas. So, for example, information will reach Chipata, just Chipata Central, but it will not reach as much when you go to Lwangeni or the other rural parts of Chipata district.
Exactly.
So when it comes to information, I think it's something which all stakeholders, especially government, have to up their game when it comes to ensure that citizens understand, first of all, that CDF is their money, Second of all, that CDF is supposed to bring about development which they themselves envision it to be. And third of all, they understand how to access this CDF. Because aside from information, the second thing which has been an issue is actually access. So when it comes to access, how can these rural areas and rural young people access CDF funds? You'll find that when it comes again to access of things like application forms or how to form cooperatives to get access to grants and all that, you find that it only reached the privileged few in most of these areas. The people who would have maybe even needed CDF more were unable to access CDF funds. So when it comes to the access processes, that's something which also government has to work on how to make it easier for citizens to access CDF, first of all, and also to register or to come into compliance with the various legislation and the guidelines which are in the CDF guidelines. So the government needs to really work on that.
And as an organization that works well with these communities, especially in most remote areas, how do you then encourage citizens to fully participate in the CDF within their communities?
When it comes to participation, I think participation has to be encouraged very much. How I would encourage them, first of all, is just be interested. Being a young person, I think I'll speak especially to the young people, is like,
yes,
just be interested, because I believe, and from the Alliance for Community Action as well, we've believed for a very long time that young people can shape the road to demanding for a better Zambia and leading to development. So when it comes to CDF, I think the first place is just be interested, because it's your money. The second part of how to take part, just go ask questions. When you go to the Parliament website, you can find various phone numbers for your MPs or emails. Try to access them. If there is a parliamentary office in your area or near you, try to visit them and ask them questions which you might have about CDF. If the local authority, the council, is near you, go there and ask them about CDF. Try to get the forms. Most of these forms are given free of charge at the council and the parliamentary offices. Access the forms. Read through what are the requirements for you to apply for CDF. See if you match those requirements. If you don't match those requirements in this period, you still have next year to apply. So you can prepare. So that also starts with interest, because if you have the forms, you know the requirements, you know what's needed for whatever you want to apply under CDF, you will be able to prepare for the next disbursement of CDF. Thirdly, interact with your zone leaders. Interact with your WDC members and the CDF committee. Maybe the CDF committee members might even be a level up. Interact with those who are based in your community, like the WDC and the zone leaders, because from these, that's where you get to submit project ideas which you'd want to be the CDF committee to deliberate over and choose of what projects will be done in your community. So interact with them. What projects have they received in your ward? Are you going to submit yours as well? Ask a lot of questions. I think one of the biggest things of getting involved in CDF as a young person or as a citizen is get curious enough to just go and ask questions. It's not a crime.
But we see, Mr. Banda, a tendency where people will not even be aware of the ward development committee. Who is involved or what are the names? They may not be aware. You discover that people just see projects commence. But how can we do away with such tendencies? Because we see, for instance, I want to give you a practical example where when the Ministry of Information was announcing measles, to say, no, you need to take your children for vaccination for measles, or let's say for to get cholera vaccinations, even the COVID vaccinations, we see that vehicle that goes around the community with a megaphone telling people to go to the nearest health center. But when it comes to projects like CDF, We do not tell people to say, let's meet at this wall. Then we discuss issues that are affecting us as a community. Then we see how we are going to participate. How can we change that narrative?
That's a very great observation, Patrick. That's something I think, from what you said, is something which you can actually advise the Minister of Local Government. As earlier stated, there is a huge information gap when it comes to this. And it's something which I think whatever conditions or whatever assumptions which the ministry and other local authorities had about how that information is going to reach the people, I think they need to scrap that and go back to the drawing board. And how are we going to transmit the information so that the person who is in the remotest area can be able to get this information and digest this information? That's something which the ministry and all other stakeholders are supposed to start asking themselves. They're also supposed to start asking themselves, how are we going to capacitate the people involved to ensure that when CDF is released, they can be able to better place explain what CDF is? Because one of the issues which I didn't mention, which we found, is that even when you go to the WDC level, there are most people in WDC who do not really understand what their role is, because being in the WDC is one of the most important roles when it comes in the CDF structures, because they are the people who receive the project list and all the list, and they then scrutinize it, see what they are going to get and what they're not going to get, and then send it up to a CDF committee. So the WDC also don't know what their power is. So when you have citizens who don't know what their power is, what their role is, and how they can get to involve, that's when you get now politicians trying to maneuver and to manipulate the process to ensure that they get the benefits and they are re-elected. But it's not supposed to be that way.
But my follow-up question, Mr. Banda, would be that what are the consequences of lack of involvement of citizens? Do they own the project? Do they feel part and parcel of the project, considering that you just see development taking place? You don't even know who is behind the road, who is the contractor with you. What are some of the consequences of such a move?
I think to the genesis of your question would be, when you do they feel like they're part of the projects? I think it also has to start with the way these projects are communicated. For an example, we say this is government money,
yes,
and government money is the people's money. So when people don't understand that the money which is coming to me is my money, this project which is coming is our money. It's the same thing of you, Mr. Soko, you go to an ATM. You put in your ATM card.
Yes.
Money comes out, and then you kneel, and then you go to the ATM. It's like, thank you, Mr. ATM, and all that. So that's the relationship which is currently happening. That's what people...
But how do we change that narrative? Because it's still common.
It's very common. The narrative has to be changed from the way government as well communicates this. This is very good when it comes to the type of communication in which the president uses, but that needs to be streamlined to the ministries. When they're communicating about what CDF is, they shouldn't communicate about this is the president's money, this is the MP's money, this is me, the councillor voted for me, I brought you this development. No. This is the people's money, and the way we communicate and how people access that money needs to be changed. Because what happens, the danger with that, when you are communicating money like that, for example, you find that in areas where you have majority opposition members of parliament, the people there will not feel like they're part and parcel of that money when it's as much of their money as everyone else's. So the way in which government communicates this is very important. And other stakeholders as well need to change the narrative and to advance the narrative of saying, this is your money. When the project is starting, you need to go and ask, from which money is this coming from? Where are the funds? Because as a citizens, you have a right to access that information.
Interesting. How dear viewers, you are watching the Ask a CDF project program that is brought to you by the Alliance for Community Action on the people's verdict. And as usual, on this program, our focus is the community and the people so that they can get to understand various issues that are affecting them. And on this segment that is brought to you by the Alliance for Community Action, we are digesting issues pertaining to the Constituency Development Fund, CDF, and we'll be doing so for weeks to come to just ensure that we get to the bottom. We address some of the critical issues. We interview and engage the people involved for various processes under the Constituency Development Fund. And just to proceed further now, Mr. Banda, I want to also find out what needs to be addressed for success for the success of the CDF in terms of corruption, vulnerability, and capacity of key stakeholders.
Okay. Thank you very much for that question, Patrick. There are several things which have been noted by several key stakeholders about how CDF can be made better. One of the things which has been mentioned is the approval process. The approval process takes place in Lusaka for all the wards, all the constituencies, but I want to use wards because we need to also understand the scope of how big Zambia is, because sometimes when we say for all the 156 constituencies, we think, just 156, it's very small. But we have a lot of wards in those 156 constituencies who've all submitted lists to the CDF committees there, and the lists have been consolidated and sent to the Ministry of Local Government. And the Ministry of Local Government is looking at all these lists. So when the approval process is treated like that, for starters, it's time consuming. That's why there have been delays in how this has been processed when it comes to constituencies are submitting their lists, but that the Ministry of Local Government is taking time. And then the second, which is the most important, is that no matter how intelligent people at the Ministry of Local Government are, they do not know the context or the direction in which development is supposed to happen in all the wards across the country. So what the Ministry of Local Government has to seriously consider is how they are going to decentralize approval.
Mr. Banda, someone wants to interact with us. Hello, you are there? Come again. In Chirabombo, you said you are Reverend.
Yes. I want to just to make share two different formats. From this educate the community about what types of development are there in the community. That is by listening to them, all that which is in the development book ready available in the street center. Number two, there must be responsibility, accountability, and the part of the development in agriculture. Number three, there must be
Well, I think we had a few key issues there: accountability and transparency. I think those are key issues that you also as an organization, you seek to advance, and you continue to do so. In case you can just respond to his concern that we need to do that. You also mentioned the aspect of awareness on the CDF.
Definitely. I wouldn't. I agree with him wholeheartedly. I think when it comes, again, going back to citizens looking at this money, they need to start looking at it as it's my money. So when you realize that it's your money, if you give someone money to do something for you, for example, if I give you money to go and buy bread for me, I expect that by the time you come back, you bring bread. So it's the same with CDF money. We need to hold our leaders accountable. We've given this money to them so that they can deliver the services which we want to see in our communities. Even the 25.7 million is our money. So me, a citizen of Material constituency, I am a stakeholder in the projects and the things which will happen concerning that money in my constituency. So I have to speak up. I have to interact with my MP. I have to ask questions about what's the progress with this with this development. So we need to ask questions. So the more we ask questions, the more leaders will see, oh, these guys are aware. So even if they want to do like a fast one on people, it will be very hard because they'll be thinking twice. They'll be like, okay, we really have to think this through before we do anything because citizens are watching.
Interesting. Well, dear viewers, you are watching The People's Verdict, and this segment is brought to you by the Alliance for Community Action under the Ask a CDF project. Just now, we'll take a short break. We'll be back on the other side. Keep it on Carlet TV.
Water is life. Each drop counts and each must be cherished. Our tried and tested product meets all international standards. With our smart drip technology, we aim to deliver precision irrigation designed to reduce blockage and wastage, ensuring a high yield. Renglow, your smart irrigation partner.
Welcome back. How dear viewers, you are still watching The People's Verdict under the program brought to you by the Alliance for Community Action, the Ask a CDF project, and we are discussing matters pertaining CDF, and our discussion today is a public awareness in the management of CDF. Quite an elaborate topic and a timely topic, considering that this has remained an issue, the aspect of awareness, and Mr. Andrew Banda from the Alliance for Community Action is helping me to discuss this very important issue, topic. And Mr. Banda, let's talk about our theme today, awareness. Have we done enough awareness for people to be abreast with whatever is happening around CDF?
I think we haven't done, not even halfway. I think we haven't done. There's a lot to be done.
Right, you say so.
there is a lot to be done. From our experiences alone,
yes.
And we haven't seen the entire Zambia. From our experiences alone, in about 4 plus districts, which include Kalomo District, Chipata District, Kawe District, Livingstone District, and here in Lusaka, we've seen that there is an information gap. When we are talking about the rural areas, most people will think of the information would have reached the rural areas when it has reached Chipata District. And when they think of Chipata District, they'll just think of Chipata Central.
Yes.
But Chipata District also has Luangeni. So you find that the people in the rural areas are marginalized when it comes to access to information. And because of that lack of access to information, the young people there are not accessing this information, because information is empowerment. So if people don't have information, they're not empowered.
Interesting. Information is empowerment indeed. Let's also look at the aspect of the minister and the MPs have the power to nominate CDF committee members How does this affect the utilization and the management of CDF?
I think that's something which, as the Alliance for Community Action, we've spoken about, which we feel isn't right, because for something which is supposed to be community-based and led by the citizens, then the citizens should have a bigger say on who sits on the CDF committee. Now that the MP is the one who has a lot of control, what happens is that the MP literally has, in some areas, over 50%, in some areas, close to 50%. He has sway in which projects can be done in that constituency, because he literally nominates about 5 members who sit on the CDF committee, plus himself, that's 6. So he only needs to ensure that 2 or 3 or even 1 other person on the CDF votes in line with him, and all the projects will go his way.
So probably, does that also justify that probably we may be seeing a situation where we have projects that reflects the interest of a member of parliament?
Definitely, because if I were MP, of course, even me, I would do it. If I was MP for Matero constituency, I would want to do all the projects which will ensure that I'll be re-elected as MP. Now, what the issue there is that the things which will get me re-elected are not necessarily the needs which of the community, which will solve the needs of the community, which will develop that community. So there is a mismatch there, and this is something which needs to be looked at a lot by government. And since the New Dawn government has prioritized community development and decentralization as something which they would really, really like to do, they really need to look at the CDF Act and ensure that a lot of power is placed in the hands of the community itself to decide the direction of the development they would like to take themselves towards.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me bring you to one other interesting issue when we talk about information and access. Currently, we do not have the access to information law, and which makes it difficult for the people to access information. And is the UPND administration fighting corruption the right way without allowing the people to access the public information? What would be your recommendation on that issue?
Well, the recommendation point blank is that we need an access to information bill, act, law, like yesterday. You viewers and young people will be interested to know that the fight for access to information has been ongoing for a very long time now. It started way before I was born, in the early 90s. So I was born in the early 90s as well, but the fight started before me. The first draft was presented to Parliament when I was in grade 4. And from then, the fight has stagnated. Not having an access to information law is a blow to community involvement, community participation, and fight against corruption in twofold. One, communities treat government offices as the holy grail. They treat it as something which is very holy, like the altar, where you have to be clean, speak good English in order for you to go and say, can I see the budget for that project? So it takes away that confidence from community members to go and ask for information. And what that does is those things will be done in secret. And whatever is done in the dark and in secret, corruption thrives there. So it's very imperative. In fact, for young people, I wish a lot of young people will get on this bandwagon and start demanding for this, because this is something which will really empower them. Because like I said, information is empowerment. Because when young people and all citizens are able to walk into any office and get the bill of quantity or any information about a project or something which is involving public money, it means that the people who would want to do shortcuts, like we saw in the recent report of the Auditor General on government payroll, would be very afraid, because they know a citizen can easily walk up and say, can I see this information? So we need to put a spotlight into this. And I will keep on going back to saying information is empowerment, and government needs to empower us.
There is a perception that this access to information only matters for the media. What would be your immediate comment on that?
Well, my immediate comment is that that is propagated by the people maybe who don't want to see the access to information law come to fruition. Because if you make it about just this disgruntled group of individuals who are trying to see this come to pass, you take away life from the debate, from the conversation. So these individuals are trying to do that. But in fact, access to information is a right. So as every citizen in Zambia, you are born with a right to access information about everywhere where government money touches. So again, the misconception is that this access to information will go into people's bedrooms and say, can I see your WhatsApp chat and all that? No. So what when we are talking about access to information is that wherever government money flows, you should be able to access that information. If you, Mr. Soko, as a government employee, you bought a car using government money, I should be able to access information about the details around that purchase, because that money which you used is my money. So when we are talking about this, and when we come specifically to CDF, it means wherever CDF money is used, we need to know the people who we give grants and what they were doing with the money for grants. We need to know the people who are getting the loans, and the people who get loans we need to pay back. We need to know what are the conditionalities. When are they paying back? Are their businesses thriving? Because me, since you are using my money to give someone a loan, it's like now I'm an investor. So I need to know how my money is faring, because I've invested money in a lot of people across the country.
In our preamble, you also talked about this CDF is coming as a result of young people. And if I heard you correctly, you also mentioned the aspect of the fact, given the fact that young people turned up in numbers to usher in this government into office. And looking at this issue pertaining to the access to information, it amounts to among those promises President Hakainde Hichilema made while in opposition, to say he's going to deliver the access to information. What is the need for the president to ensure that he upholds this commitment and deliver the access to information and make it easier for Zambians to access information?
Well, three things really when it comes to that. First of all, he said he would do it, so he must do it. If he's unable to do it, he needs to get back to citizens and explain and justify why he's unable to do it, because that's a right of citizens. Second of all, like I will keep on coming back to, the president has said that the fight for corruption is of paramount importance. So he needs to empower citizens to fight corruption. And how will citizens fight corruption? If citizens can confidently and easily walk up to any institution which is using government money and say, I would like to request for this information. It means citizens will be vigilant enough to say, okay, here things don't add up. You bought 10 bags of cement, but you only used one. According to this, where's the other 9? Citizens will be able to blow that whistle. The president cannot be everywhere in Zambia. Even the Anti-Corruption Commission cannot be everywhere in Zambia. They need vigilant citizens who are confident to go and access information everywhere. So if this president wants to put his mouth money where his mouth is, I would say the right way to do it is making sure that enacting this law is of paramount importance.
Interesting. Now, my question now would be, my follow-up question rather, would be that corruption is a delicate issue, and just probably we're tapping into your understanding. How can we identify corruption? What mechanisms can we use to identify corruption, especially pertaining to CDF?
Corruption is a huge thing which young people, especially,
because sometimes,
and citizens.
Mr. Banda, I would think someone, me, accessing a form and me paying someone is right because I need to get a form. So all those are things that maybe people may be experiencing on account of not having information as well.
Okay, so one of the things I think we have gotten used to is this thing of paying for services which you are supposed to naturally get. And that's something which how you can, one of the easiest ways to, I think, to identify corruption. When you go to get a government service, and then you have to pay money to get a service which is supposed to be provided to you for free in the first place. That's a red flag, because you've, in actual sense, even double paid this person. Because one, your money is paying for his salary or her salary, and then two, you're also paying for them to actually do the job which you have already paid them to do. So citizens can identify corruption in multiple layers. They can identify corruption of where people try to give other people advantage over others because of status or financial benefits which they can accrue to themselves. So when someone is trying to take advantage of citizens by getting resources which they're supposed to use, and using it for their own private gain, those are some of the ways which citizens can identify corruption. And citizens really need to take very keen interest in how corruption destroys their lives and learn to report corruption and always observe how corruption is happening, because at the end of the day, it's their money which is being used.
Let's just hear the word corruption, Mr. Banda, corruption. But what are some of the effects of corruption and the consequences, especially on the lives of ordinary citizens?
Okay. I would give a very practical example of how people would be affected when it comes to corrupt practices in multiple layers. Corruption, again, affects citizens in a lot of multiple areas. Say in your community you're building a school, and this school is supposed to be a secondary school and finally be the first secondary school in your community, and it will solve a whole array of problems. But there's this contractor who really wants to get this contract to build this school. So this contractor goes to the officer who is in charge of awarding this tender and says, okay, in this contract, I'll give you 10%. And then in that, when you get that 10%, I'll get the contract for the school. But because that contractor is giving up part of the money to this officer, that contractor will reduce the materials which are supposed to be go to the building of that school. So you find that communities will get smaller classrooms. You even find substandard classrooms where within 1 or 2 years the school is falling apart. A practical example which I always talk about is go and see the roads, the third road in Zingalum, which were built in the last 10 years. You would even be surprised to say, was there even a road here? Because those roads are totally dilapidated. So corruption does this to communities. Its money is spent, but the services which the community get, in fact, my money is spent. So I always talk about the Zingalume Road because I'm a beneficiary of material constituency. That's my constituency. So money was spent there, but if you look at the state of the road, it's very terrible. Yes. And this is the case, and these are the stories which are happening all over, happening all over the country in our communities. And that's why citizens need to take keen part, because if what we've seen when corruption happens, broken down roads, broken down schools, unfinished projects, slab level schools, broken down clinics which were never completed. We can even talk about the FTJ University, though there are still some investigation there. So if you look at all this, that was my money, and that's what citizens need to say. That was my money which would have improved my life. and that money is gone. So if we do not identify and report corruption in CDF, it will be the same business as usual. Our money will not achieve anything in our communities, will not achieve anything in our lives.
Interesting. Well, we can check if we have some messages in case people wanted to reach to us through text messages. We read one or two text messages there, or if we don't have, we can proceed and continue our discussion. Director. So, we seem not to have any text message there. So we continue now, Mr. Banda. There's another aspect. Why should citizens take a keen interest in the fight against corruption?
As alluded to, it's our money. Like the biggest reason why citizens should take part in the fight against corruption is that first of all, it's our money, and if this money, which has been released to make your life better, is not used to make your life better, your life will not become better. When citizens went out to vote, they were voting for development. They were voting for more jobs. They were voting for participation in government processes. They were voting for clinics. They were voting for water. So when we relax and not fight corruption, when we do not report corruption, when we do not take interest in the processes of CDF and government money and identify and report corruption, it means that what we voted for will not come to fruition. So the fight for corruption is actually the protection of the vote. You want to protect what you voted for. You voted for jobs, so you're going to fight corruption because you want to protect jobs. You voted for development or for a school or for water in your community. So you're going to fight and report corruption because you don't want those things to come into your community. So when you realize that your life is at stake, like literally your life is on stake, your community's life is on stake, you will begin to see corruption differently. Because corruption is something, if we want to see a better Zambia, if we want to see a developed Zambia in our lifetime, I would like to see a developed Zambia in my lifetime, then we'll be able to say, let's fight corruption. Let's see how better we can fight corruption. Citizens will be getting more and more involved in the fight against corruption.
Under the Constituency Development Fund, CDF, but how can the media as well as the civil society organization play a role towards combating corruption?
First thing and foremost, I think the biggest thing where the media and other stakeholders can play a role around CDF is ensuring that, firstly, the monitoring teams which have been set up. The CDF guidelines sets up different monitoring teams from national, provincial, to district to ward level, where these projects can be monitored. So we need to ensure, I think, that these monitoring teams are working. That's very critical, because only when there's monitoring of CDF projects by the people who we've entrusted to do the monitoring, before we even go to citizens, can there be reports coming out about what's happening. So the CDF guidelines is very elaborate about different monitoring teams which monitor how these projects and these CDF funded things are progressing. So we need to report about these things. Are they happening in our community? Are these monitoring teams have they been formed already? Have they started doing their monitoring? How is that going? We need to start getting these monitoring reports from them, because they need to produce monitoring reports. So the media and stakeholders can play a role by ensuring that these systems which have been put in place and the monitoring reports which they are producing are seeing the light of day. Citizens need to know what's happening, and they can blow the whistle. Citizens themselves as well can also play a huge role by taking an interest in a project which is happening around you, which is being funded either by government money and CDF specifically. Go and ask, what's the plan, what's the budget, what's the scope? When was it supposed to start? When was it supposed to end? Because when a contract has been given out, even contractors have fixed start and end dates in which they need to deliver the things which they say they'll deliver. So citizens can take a keen role to say, okay, this is a project which has come to our community. They've said this is a start date, this is the end date. We'll continue engaging with them to make sure that by the time they said it's ending 31st August, the project, or is it the school, is it the borehole, has been delivered to our community and we can start enjoying that resource. So there's a lot of levels in which a lot of stakeholders and citizens and young people especially can take part in this.
Let's look at the aspect of disbursement of resources. Is it timely? Because others have been of the view that probably we are not doing as fine as we should, considering that we have released money for, should be 2 quarters. But however, the money that is needed in total should be 25.7 million. And we are already discussing the formulation of the 2023 national budget. But how have you done an assessment on that? Are we on course? Are we going to manage eventually to make sure that the CDF concept works out?
Well, Patrick, when it comes to that, again, that's one of the issues which has been identified when it comes to the challenges which are facing CDF. And that has also got to deal, I think, majorly with 2 things, is that this, first of all, is a first year, it's a teething year, so there was bound to be a lot of issues, and I hope the government has taken note and will address a lot of these issues, because you realize that, you also understand that the call for applications started late because the guidelines themselves came out in February, because the call is usually supposed to start in the first month of the year to give time for implementation and all that. But because the call started late, coupled with the fact that authorization of all projects is done in Lusaka, and many other facts, we've ended up with a timeline which is stretching into areas of where we're looking like most constituencies might not disperse their funds before the year ends, and that money will go back to the National Treasury, which is a shame. So when it comes to that, I think government needs to work on the issues which have been identified when it comes to the disbursement. There needs to be timely announcements and ensure that the announcements reach the people. There needs to be capacity building of the people who are handling CDF. They need to know their roles. The zone leaders need to know their roles. The WDC need to know their role. And they need to know how they're working together with the other role players in the CDF processes, so that everyone is doing their role on time. Because even when CDF was announced, the WDC members had to be taken for training. Others, we discovered when we were doing WDC trainings, they didn't even receive the trainings. So there've been all these hiccups. So our view, we don't want to be too harsh in this first year, because a lot of issues have been identified. But our view is that these are issues which need to be looked at seriously and dealt with as we are coming to the second term of CDF.
Yeah, we are having this conversation at a time when recently we had the Auditor General's report indicating quite a number of issues in terms of financial irregularities to a tune of over 2 billion. And looking at the aspect of paying ghost workers 7.7 million, those are quite huge figures being mismanaged in the public sector. Now, when we look at the history of the Constituency Development Fund, CDF also, we are also alive to the fact that in the past, the CDF was misused and was treated as a payment to political party cadres who supported the ruling party. And whenever they are given empowerment, they thought it was payment for gratification for having supported the party, for having indulged in political violence. And we saw a lot of problems. But now, how can we mitigate such issues pertaining to financial irregularities and ensuring that, for instance, those who are getting loans under the Constituency Development Fund are able to pay back so that the money can equally revolve to ensure that others equally benefit?
I'm very happy that you brought that up. It's one of the issues actually we identified of where there is a danger where CDF might be used as a patronage fund. Where since you supported me in my last election, form a cooperative and I'll make sure that your cooperative is given money. This can be noted in how in some other parts, for example, in Nundazi, there was a story where some party cadres blocked one of the offices saying that them as UPND members were not given being considered for CDF. So you can even see that there are people who actually think of it as party money. So when it comes to that, I think the guidelines are pretty clear, though they are not very strong. When it comes to patronage, there's still a very big danger to that. It's very loose, but the guidelines do provide some ways in which this can be combated by ensuring, for example, when I talked about the monitoring group. So the monitoring group are very crucial. The office of the Auditor General is also quoted in the guidelines as an institution which will play a role in ensuring that the books of CDF money are audited. So there is these things which will be able to tell us how we're faring. Of course, I cannot say right now to say that it's bad, it's good. It's something which we're hoping is not, it's not happening across the country, as in some areas where you hear it on the news, where people are bold enough to go and demand to say, we are from this party, and since we're the party in power, we need to ensure that that money comes to us. So we need to ensure that the institutions which have been mandated to ensure that financial irregularities do not happen are working. We need to ensure the Office of the Auditor General, even in the last report, did make an emphasis to ensure that internal auditors are active and are working, and the recommendations of the internal auditors are being adhered to. So we need to strengthen capacity of all the officers and the role players in the CDF processes. That will help minimize the level to which financial irregularities will happen when audits finally come out.
I know, we understand that the Constituency Development Fund is also a cross-cutting issue in terms of interministries. How can, for instance, many other ministries, like for instance, the Ministry of SMEs, play a role in ensuring that, for instance, people who are getting into empowerment programs are well vested on entrepreneurship or how to manage funds? For instance, we talk about financial literacy. This is a cooperative led by, let's say, old women or youths who have no financial understanding. But how can we change such narrative while using other ministries or other organizations, other departments that government has to ensure that these people are well equipped to be able to use the fund for intended purposes and be able to pay back or even support others, and also contribute effectively to the communities?
Well, that's a conversation, by the way, we can have the whole day. I think in another life, I'm an entrepreneur. So when it comes to that, I do agree. CDF is a cross-cutting issue, and it requires all ministries to take active part in its implementation and ensure that the way CDF is being managed, when it comes to the area of expertise which they're working in, they're working, it's being done, so to say. When it comes to entrepreneurship, I do agree that we need to up our game when it comes to entrepreneurship and the people who are applying to access these loans and these grants. I was joking with a friend the first time when CDF was announced. I was like, I'm pretty sure when people apply for these loans, because before it was 1.6, so people would apply and would get maybe 5,000, 4,000. So in my mind, I was pretty sure that when people are applying, they will be applying for those small figures, because they are used to traditional ways of businesses. So at that level, that's the capacity which they see, and that's the capacity which they are at. And there's a lot of opportunities for other partners to step in, for even the Ministry of SMEs to say, okay, there is this money which allows them to access it and do things at this capacity, and they're doing it at this capacity. How can we come in to bridge the gap between the two? There's a lot of opportunities on a lot of businesses which young people and ordinary citizens can do across the country, of how they can take advantage of the things which are in their constituencies and in their areas to make money for the country, for themselves and their communities. So yes, I think there is a lot of opportunities, and it's something which not just the Ministry of SMEs, but other entrepreneurship hubs, I can mention a few such as Bongo Hive, would be interested to. There's another one which deals in agriculture called AgriN. So there are a lot of these other stakeholders which can be brought to the table to say, your point of entrepreneurship is this level. How can we put you together with the people who have applied in this pool so that you can capacitate them to go to the next level, so that when they're doing their businesses, they're not doing it at that capacity, they're doing it at that capacity, and the returns for the country, the returns for the community, and the returns for themselves will be twofold or threefold even.
Interesting. Mr. Banda, as we come towards the end of our discussion, what would be your concluding remarks and your word of advice to people who are daring to venture into CDF or to take part in various community projects which the government is implementing?
I think, like I've said, they need to realize that CDF is their money. I think one of the things was a bit of dilly-dallying of saying, maybe I didn't vote for this government, so I do not have a right or I do not have a say. You may have not voted for the government, but the money the government is using is your money. So whether you voted for them or you did not vote for them, the money is still yours.
Exactly.
So you can decide to take part in that money, or you can sit by and see that money either benefit others who sometimes are not even deserving, or be used wrongfully in ways which will not benefit your community or yourselves. So I think we all should take a keen interest and say, this is my money. I may have not voted for them, but it's still my money. When the UPDND came into government, they did not come with their money, but they're using the institutions and the resources which are available to the government, and those institutions and resources belong to every citizen. So each citizen should say, I want to take part. I have this idea which can bring about this amazing development in this. I want to take part. I want to ensure that there is no mismanagement in this. So citizens can easily report mismanagement to the anti-corruption. They have toll-free numbers. They can easily report mismanagement to the Office of the Auditor General. They also have toll-free numbers. So they can interact with all these institutions to make sure either they're ensuring that CDF is not abused, or they are one of the participants in CDF and doing amazing things in their communities. I have a lot of faith, I always say, in the young people and the ideas which they can come up with and the things which they can do with CDF. So young people, take part.
But how can also, before I let you go, how can people engage the Alliance for Community Action in case they want to find out something or ask for advice pertaining to issues on CDF?
All right. So we are on Facebook. You can find us on Facebook. Just Alliance for Community Action on Facebook. We are also on Instagram and Twitter, and even TikTok now. So when you go to @ZambiaAsk on any of these platforms, you'll be able to find us there. We are on YouTube as well, Alliance for Community Action. We are on LinkedIn, Alliance for Community Action. If you go to our Facebook, when you type in www.scazambia.org, you can also find information there. We've also created a dedicated web page on all information concerning CDF. We have the forms which you can download there. We have a drama series which you can listen to, get information while laughing, and we'll also include this show, for example, which will be there for all citizens to go back and watch. So we have a lot of information around CDF, and we'll continue to update our page as we get more feedback from citizens of what information they want to be on our webpage.
Interesting. Thank you very much for coming through.
Thank you for having me.
Well, dear viewers, we've come to the end of this episode of The People's Verdict, and this episode was actually brought to you by the Alliance for Community Action Ask CDF project. It's a TV series that we've been airing here on Camnet TV. Until next week when we come with another interesting topic of discussion, keep it on Camnet TV. This has been Patrick Soko.